Hello, beautiful souls. I am Valeria Maritza at Healing Through You. I am an infinite being of light, and so are you. I am so excited today to bring you my new guest. This is Carrie Cass. She is an evidential medium, and I'm going to let her tell you all about that. I have always been fascinated by mediums, and so I'm just so excited for you to get to meet her. And let's bring her in. Welcome, Carrie. I am so excited to have you here in this podcast.
My gosh, Valeria, I have to say, it's a really thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to connect with you and your listeners and just hopefully spread some, uplifting, validating help for people along their spiritual path. It's so good to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I have always been really interested in mediumship and mediums and psychics, but especially mediums since I was young. And your energy is so welcoming and so loving and safe. And I'm just so excited to bring you over so that you can talk more to the audience about what mediumship has done for you, how where it came from for you, or how you opened up or came out of the closet, so to speak, like a spiritual closet, um,
Mhm.
so that maybe other people can see themselves in your story and maybe take some nuggets that can resonate with. Yeah, let's just go from there.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Well, first of all, again, thanks for having me. And I am really excited to talk about mediumship and break it down and demystify it and also validate it because especially when you move as a medium and you start working with the public, you realize how much misinformation there is about what mediumship is. And as you educate people, you can help them realize they're having these type of experiences all the time. They are just not recognizing it. And so that's one of my big goals is helping people become their own mediums. That I believe we all have the ability to be a medium, 100%. It's just a matter of your intention and if you want to develop it. So that's the first thing. But I guess I'll start with the beginning for me. And I know, like you, Valeria, when I was young, I really sensed the presence of spirit. Now, for me, that did not come in the form of seeing them either visually or clairvoyantly, but feeling them and sensing, and then getting some images and pictures. But I was very unsure and overwhelmed by that, and not sure how to, navigate my connection with spirit world. So, like many of us, I sort of closed it down when I was young. And I also remember, like, I have this story of like running into my parents' bedroom and jumping in between the middle of them and their king size bed and just feeling like I have stuff all around me and energy wise, but I don't know what to do about it. So there was a bit of that. And then later, when I was in my teens, I started having my awakening. And the way it worked for me was very interesting because as a medium, I wasn't as interested in necessarily connecting with those who'd crossed over. I was more interested in connecting with, as a psychic and an energy healer. So for many years, I didn't have it wasn't a burning desire for me to work in that way. I was much more interested in focusing on my clients. And I did go to school for becoming a psychic. I was in a school for 3 years in my 20s in California and got really good training. But what happened after that was that I started going into different locations, either just buildings or connected to people that were clients of mine, things like that. And I started sensing the presence of spirit. And so I just naturally started picking up on things and sensing, knowing, and just cueing in. But to be honest with you, it wasn't till about 7 years ago that I really started working on it because I kind of ignored it. I didn't want to tune in. I didn't have enough information. It wasn't as much of a burning desire for me until I started coming into more contact with spirits. It was like spirit was telling me, hey, you've got to help people that are people that are alive that have lost, loved ones that are grieving. And you need to be able to help people with this process and let them know there is life after passing. and do that in a way that is what we call evidential, which will definitely, I know you and I talked about that, explaining what that is, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's so
That's a big
important.
thing it's very important because of being able, here's the thing, as we, you know this, as we develop our psychic abilities and our connection with spirit, being able to really discern and bring through clear information is very important, because our own filter, our own bias, our own judgments, our own fears and projections can muddy the water of messages and also block our communication with the spirit world. So I knew this already because that was the training I had as a psychic. And I knew that if I leaned into mediumship, I wanted to do it at the highest level, mainly because I wanted to stay in integrity and to not, and to really come forth with something I knew I could do it as a technique in a solid way for my clients. This was really my intention. So I started leaning into the training of what would be considered more the spiritualist movement, which is both in the United States, but also really in the UK. And I started training with teachers that were specific evidential mediums, and they many of them were trained at the Arthur Findlay College in the UK, and then also through the Spiritualist Church, which is connected to all over the world, but in the United States as well. So the difference between, say, just being a medium and then tuning into spirit and then bringing forth evidential mediumship is that someone who's an evidential medium has really gone through the rigors of discerning and not putting their own ego into the messages they receive from the spirit communicator. So there, it's very much about, it's technically based to a certain degree, and it is the mechanics, that way you connect, because and it's just through a continuous repetition, but it's really you're a student of spirit. And so when you're there, when you're connecting with someone's loved one, you're able to really pick up and then communicate without bias the information they're giving you, and it can be very subtle, but and it's just this continuous, development that people do, and that helps people really understand that their loved one without a doubt is coming through during a reading. So and I Because what I noticed before I was trained is that sometimes my own doubt or bias or my own sort of riffing in my own, I don't want to say imagination, because spirit does work with your imagination, I think, to give you images. That's a
Mhm.
technical thing. But what, you know, the difference between when the person is just intuiting about something and coming up with their own interpretation of what the spirit is saying, and then when the spirit is talking. So I'll give you an example. When you, and it's also the way that the spirit comes to you. When, let's say you come to me for a session and you want to connect with your father in spirit. Okay, so as an evidential medium, there's different ways to do this, but you're going to be connecting in and inviting that spirit to come in close and share whatever evidence or information that will let you know it's your dad. But that can come in many ways. It can come in how he felt, his personality. It can come in his favorite colors, the food he liked, what he did for a living. It can come in a memory that you will know, but it also can come in things that are going on in your life that only you would know, right? But the thing is when we're blending in this way, I, as the medium, I'm just delivering the information. I'm not trying to interpret, because I don't know your memories with your dad or with anyone else, that or your life. If let's say he shows me an image of you writing something, and he's telling me something you did when you were 16 and you wrote a paper. If I get images from him that say, okay, here's the paper, and then something about you, I can come up with my own story about that as the medium, right? I could kind of say, well, maybe he means this, and maybe he means that, and maybe he means this. And I'll say to you, does that make sense? And you'll say no, because because I have put my own filter on it. Rather, I'll just say to you, piece by piece, he's showing me a pencil with you writing, the paper's brown. He showed me you're at age 16. Would you understand that? And you come to your own evidential conclusions. It's basically you're there to show up and to share what you're getting, not interpret or judge or confine. And a lot of mediums, when they're starting out, they will censor themselves or say, well, that doesn't make sense. Or
Yeah.
that is, how can that, right? So as we are approaching, and even you, so let's say you really want to connect with your loved one in spirit, right? As a person, and you don't want to go to a medium, which is fine. One of the things I always tell my students and my clients is just make regular time during your week to just connect with your loved one and do it in a very simple way, and for example, and then have a little journal with you, make some time, maybe 20 minutes each session, light a candle, quiet the room, and ask them to come close to you so you can feel them. And then note your impressions. Don't try and analyze it, don't try and censor it. And then you can continue that journey. And the more you do that, the more you realize you're getting these messages, and you're going to be able to validate them. As also, you can ask them for signs, things like that. Very evidential, right? And I definitely have a lot of examples with that as well. But the process of being a medium is really that you are a space holder for the communication to occur without filter between the spirit communicator and the person who's your sitter or your client. And it's never ceases to amaze me. So my journey of doing this and then teaching students has been it's some of the most profound work we will ever do, because it's not only that you're telling their loved ones, the ones, those that are grieving, that life goes on after passing. It's that you tell them that they are okay. And this by being a medium yourself, that everything, once they reach the spirit world, they are in peace, they are in harmony, there's no judgment, there's no guilt, they're not angry at you, they only feel love, and they only want to help you. So all of the pain that many people feel before they get a reading with you is really dissolved quite quickly after the reading's over. So what a gift to be able to share that with people, and what an honor. And it's something that I'm really grateful for spirit, because I feel like I get to be witness to so much healing that goes on because of it. So,
Amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
I wanted to when you were talking about not getting in the way and just delivering what you're receiving, I remember the first time that I did a reading for a mediumship, because I started as I'm an energy healer, so I was doing energy healing, and here I am in front of someone on Zoom, and all of a sudden this helicopter comes and it's like right on top of my house, and I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, let's just wait for this to go. I couldn't concentrate, and it's like this had never happened before, like, but it was not leaving. It was literally on top of my house. And I'm trying to wait for it to go. I'm like getting annoyed. I'm like, I can't concentrate on my healing. And all of a sudden, I had this thought. If it felt like a thought to me. And I said, let me just ask you something. I don't know if you're open to this, but I'm just going to say it. And she said,
Good.
okay, I'm open. And I said, okay, did you have someone who might have passed over that was in the military? And she said, my father. And I was like, what just happened?
Beautiful.
And then as soon as she said that, helicopter left.
Amazing. And that is even synchronistic, because that's something that's more in the physical world, but it's showing up as evidence. So that is an amazing sign. Her
Yeah.
father must have really wanted her to get that message to you, her for evidence, something very concrete. That's phenomenal. I
Yeah.
love
And
that you surrendered to that too. I love that you did that.
yeah, it was, but it was the reason I'm sharing is because it was so like I was annoyed. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't, but then I just spoke what came through, which is
Exactly.
what you said. I'm not getting
Yes.
in the way of interpreting what it is. It's just I'm just seeing or feeling or perceiving a message, and I'm delivering it. And then the other person is the one who validates it for you.
100%. I love that and that totally makes sense to me with your nature, because you are so much all about serving and just letting go and moving out of your interpretation. And I know you channel and everything else. And that is something, all those things are going to be building blocks for an amazing mediumship experience, both for you and for your sitter. And, and that's really what it is, because there's I guess you could say, here's the thing, three things have to occur with a mediumship reading. First of all, there's you, who's the client or the sitter. Then there's your loved one in the spirit world. Your loved one in the spirit world is not connected to the medium. The
Mhm.
loved one's connected to you and your energy, your aura, your field. And what happens is, for us as mediums, that's one of the reasons for us, is that we tune in and we're picking up the frequency, the vibration, the channel of what they're bringing through. So the more we open up and develop our senses as mediums, and we learn to tune into those subtle, you know, like frequencies essentially, and the subtle cues, and how spirit works with our field and our energy to then bring through those messages, the better we can bring those through. So with my students, we do a lot of exercises that have nothing to do with bringing through messages from spirit. We do things like listening to different types of sounds, and noticing how we feel, and maybe even if we have an experience out in the world and we can describe it with depth, right? Because spirit is really working with your energy, your memories, your imagination, and your frequency, to be able to then send their message to the sitter. And that's what the communication is. So the more we work on ourselves as mediums, the more open, like how you are, the more evolved we are, the more open, the better the communication will flow. And just because someone says they're a medium doesn't mean they're bringing through evidence or accuracy. Anybody can say your grandmother's here and she loved you and baked cookies. It's like that. Anybody can have that experience.
Mm.
But there's many factors that go into a mediumship reading being, really connecting. And there are things like in the spirit world, there when a spirit comes through, they come through with how they were in when they were alive. So if they're more reserved, they will show you that. Or if they maybe were a little more serious, they will show you that. It's not all of a sudden like everyone is like in the spirit world and they're walking around different. They have to bring you that evidence so you know it's them, and then they can communicate further. So sometimes as a medium, when you're doing the readings, you will really have to observe things, because it's not like it's an open flowing channel all the time. You'll have to talk through what you're receiving. So it's very much, you're a student of observation and neutrality, and just saying what you're getting, because you have to be okay with being wrong, and someone saying, no, that doesn't make sense to me, and be okay with that, because it's not a performance, it's a tuning in. The good thing is, all the no's you get when you do those readings, only you just take a step back further, and you go back to the spirit communicator and you tune in again, and you can change. Might have gotten your optics wrong, or you maybe said, like, this was a fun one I did a couple weeks ago. This woman's father was coming through, and so I saw there was a lot of evidence coming through about his health and his personality and things like that. And then we got to the shoes, and he showed me a pair of black shoes. My brain went ahead and filled in something, and it said, oh, these are black Converse. And I'll tell you why it did that. And I said, would you understand him wearing black Converse? She said, not black Converse. I said, hang on. And I went back to him and I looked at it again, and I just saw black. I said, would you understand black shoes? And she said, absolutely. He was a diabetic. He wore black shoes. And what I realized was something that I told my students about, because I always tell them when I make mistakes so they can learn. I said, I did a reading a year and a half ago for a woman whose brother came through so strong, and he showed me a pair of black Converse in that. And I, in my own mind, jumped ahead in my own head and told her that that was not the right evidence. I saw black, but I filtered it through my piece of information. So that's what we're doing as mediums. We are, we're developing. We are okay with the curating process of the evidence, and really, and seeing how we're observing ourselves as well in our own filter on a consistent basis. And so, because sometimes, like I have students, I say, you're rushing ahead in the evidence. You're like trying to make the story make sense. That's
Oh,
not your job. Your job is not to make it make sense. Your job is to show up and stay connected to the sitter and the spirit communicator. That's your job. And describe what you're seeing and not filter it,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, because the ego gets in the way.
Yes. And the ego likes to make it look pretty and make
Yes.
it make sense, you know? So,
You mentioned that you do different exercises with your students. And I haven't worked with you, so I'm not sure of all the exercises that you do, obviously. But it brought me back to my son taking guitar lessons because he started taking guitar lessons at age 4. And I remember that the music teacher would teach him one note on each session, and you'd be like ding, 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 and I'm like, what? Like, like that's what I'm paying for? Like not knowing the wholeness of how this was going to come together. And then next week it was another note. Boop, right? I mean, he's 4 years old. He's just playing one note, right?
mhm.
And then towards the end of the school year, he puts together this song using all of those notes that he had learned one by one, and it was in his subconscious. It was already learned, and so now he gives him the notes. He's reading the music, and his fingers just do it because he did that one by one so slowly.
Wow. That's
And
a building block. Amazing.
I thought, oh, this is what I felt when you were talking about the exercises that you do, that, oh, this is what she's doing, but with mediumship. And does that resonate?
Yeah, that totally resonates so deeply. And it's funny because just to be really transparent, for me, the part about teaching mediumship is still within the stages of me being a teacher and a mentor, is a newer thing that I'm doing. So I'm still really building my acumen and my understanding of development, and I do it differently. And the way I teach, actually, although I have structured where we're working on, my guides really help drive it. Like if we're working on clairvoyance, if we're working on clairaudience, if we're working on clairsentience, if we're working on claircognizance, we're doing different things, and I can basically tell where my students are and what they're with, where they're more shut down. So I really try to lean into that and break things down. And because some of them, especially with things like clairvoyance, because clairvoyance is always the one everybody wants, they want to see. And that it's like a lot of clairvoyance is much more subtle. It's not always, it's more what is known as being subjective, which is internally, as opposed to objective clairvoyance, which is outside of you literally seeing a spirit, right? And because of those biases, they're doing this. So
Like the
I,
ghost whisperer.
yes, exactly. Like, yep, I saw that. I saw that. And I mean, all of us as mediums, we've probably had that experience at least a few times of like a vibration or an apparition or some figure or out of the corner of our eye. And then we get a flash or something. There's different degrees of that. So with my students, and I really learned this actually there's an amazing medium who's a very prolific Scottish medium. Most people know him, Gordon Smith. And actually, we were talking about Suzanne Giesman, and Gordon Smith is actually one of my favorite mediums of all time, because Gordon Smith is really an observer of life and spirit. And so he's not just focused on, okay, let's get it from the spirit. He's also focused on you as a human being and your consciousness and how you relate and how you connect and what things you can do. But I lean into where my students are, and I can see where maybe they're imbalanced in their abilities, and then I lean in and give them exercises. For example, if they and it's also this is why I also encourage them to like continue reading and everything, because their description, they're limited. So for example, if the spirit is sort of giving them a taste of something, sour is a favorite one, and they're saying, I taste something, I'm not really sure what it is, right? And they stop there. I can tell, obviously, that they have not really gone into that is it tangency, I think, or clairgustance, where they're really like, when you taste a watermelon, how would you describe it, right? If the spirit has your access to you and you have that depth of observation in your acumen, they'll tap into it. If you're not evolved in that because you're very much, limited with your senses, which is a whole nother story. I'm going to be teaching a class about that, with why people are limited with their senses. And that's another story. But then I'll say, here's your homework. I want you to cook a few really luscious meals. And I want you to then observe, how does it feel to eat that meal? What is your experience? And what are some adjectives you would use to describe that? Because the spirit is giving you all that. It's saying, he felt luscious. He loved spices. He loved the way when he would eat with the family and everybody would make this dish. If you're in your box, you're like, he liked food. You're not going anywhere with that. In turn, also, this is my favorite one from Gordon, is auditory wise, like you said. If you've been a person who's listened to like one type of music your whole life, and that spirit's giving you a classical, like a Baroque piece or a concerto, and you're like, I'm hearing some music with a violin, you can't really go in and say, this music just filled him up. He sensed this. And what if he was a musician? And you're bringing that evidence through. Like, you have to go on the journey where the spirit is taking you, and you have to be willing to have the experience with the spirit, so then you can share what you're getting. And so it's literally like artistry. This because you're a very creative person, and that's what you're an artist, so you understand the intimacy of the senses. So if we're deepening our senses, and when we sit to go on a reading, we can just go where the spirit's taking us, even if it's taking us, and you deal with someone, like many of my clients says, like someone was an engineer, or they were a little more reserved, or, they didn't have, but you can still describe that with such accuracy, because you're sensing and observing what it felt like to be in that spirit's body. Yeah. So that's really what it's about. I use, and I also recommend things like, I say, you need to do some Tai Chi, you need to like learn how to dance, because there's just this thing of rigidity, and this in the body, where spirit is all around us, right? So if we are limited and in our own bubble, we're not going to connect. And even if you just want to connect with your own loved ones on the other side, they're giving you all kinds of messages, but you're in your own box thinking, oh, well, I was expecting to hear that one song,
Yes.
what? You missed the touch on the hand, you missed the whisper, you missed the leaf falling, you missed the song they brought you that was more subtle, you missed the food taste. So that's, for me, what I mean by exercises that I've learned from some of my mentors, and learning to blend with spirit and then describe.
Amazing. That
Yeah.
feels so good. I remember I had a reading once, many years back, before my own awakening or awareness,
Yeah.
where I'm a big skeptical. So
I love
I,
that. I love a
right?
sketch. Love
Yes.
it.
So
Mhm.
I'm there and I'm drawn, and this guy's hitting everything, right? But for everything he hits, which is dead on, I still have in the back of my mind, yeah, but how could he have figured that out? Right? So not really trusting, not really allowing. And at the very, very end, I remember that he mentioned someone I had just met like literally 2 weeks ago before I saw him. And he says, oh, I see somebody with this name. And I'm like, yeah, I know several. He goes, no, no, this one you just met. And I was like,
Wow.
and then right there, it just brought everything with all of my skepticism and all of my doubts that how did he figure that out? Or how could he had, right?
Wow.
Or all of that, it just brought it back. And then it was just that one part of evidence that, hey, this is real. Like
You
your
need
loved one sees you.
Yeah, and that's what I love that so much, because one of the things that I feel like when you're connecting with spirits, your spirit loved ones know you in the ins and outs of you. So they'll know if you're a big skeptic, meaning they'll then give you they'll give the medium the evidence to share so that it'll make sense. Now, if the medium is in any way blocking that, you're not going to get that evidence. I had a really interesting one about like a month or so ago, and I was reading, and all of a sudden, it was her father in the spirit world, and he said to me, "Ask her if she just had ice cream." I said, "Let me," and then he showed me crunchy, like I with nuts, and I said, "Okay, this might sound interesting. Stick with me." I said, and he literally said to me, "She's eaten it in the last half an hour." I said, "Let me ask you a question. Would you understand ice cream with nuts in it and you're eating it in the last 30 minutes?" And she was like gobsmacked because she was literally eating praline ice cream in that 30 minutes. So, I mean, and if I had been like, well, that's a little far fetched in my head, or, or saying, well, maybe that was him eating it, you can vociferate over the content, or you can just say it.
Yes.
And then the other thing is, I am not looking for validation or trying to build the story through the sitter. I'm just saying, would you understand that? Does that resonate? And I'm not saying, what does it make any sense to you? I don't know what he's talking about. What if I did any of that riffing? That would have also created a disconnect between me and the evidence. So that it was, she was just literally bowled over. Like, what? She couldn't believe it. It was awesome. And they've been doing that with me. They've been doing different, the spirit world has been doing different things with me. My spirit guide's been doing different things with me in the moment, to like what, because I do a lot of gallery readings with a lot of,
Hmm.
sometimes on lives, so I'll have 50, 60, 70, 80 people in the room, and I say to my guides, okay, a lot of people can take some of these parts of evidence you're giving me. A grandfather who was caring, who might have been from the Midwest, there's like 20 people who can take that. I said, can you give me something in the beginning that's very specific, that only maybe like almost no one can take but one or two people? And so that's how the evidence comes to me now when I'm in a group. That, like, once I got this thing about a house fire, and where it was like a certain kind of house fire. The house was older. It looked like it was something from like the turn of the century. And there was someone standing outside, and out of 80, 100 people, only one person can take that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's so specific.
Yes.
So it's, the spirit world has so much to teach us, and our spirit guides can also really help us, which is something I try to, work with my clients and students to help you develop, because
I
that's their
mean,
job.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I've heard a lot about our spirit guides or guardian angels are unemployed because most people don't use them or ask for their help. And I
I,
love that statement. I was like, they're unemployed. They're only working for you.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Um, in this time where there's so many people are becoming aware and having their own awakening right now, and um, especially a lot of people who have been like I grew up Roman Catholic, so anything about connecting outside of the box
Yes.
is frowned upon and is scary. So what would you advise people who are waking up right now and perhaps they have this conditioning of like, I don't want to listen, but yet they're feeling it, they're seeing it, or they have lost a loved one, but they have that conditioning of I can't connect because it's frowned upon. Yet they're feeling it. Like, how would you speak to that part of the audience? Because I feel that there's so many people coming into this space and becoming aware and beginning to feel and be curious, yet they're holding themselves back because of all of the way that they have grown up.
That makes so much sense. And that's such a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. So I call that process deconstructing. And it's very, very common. So if that is you and you feel that way, you are not alone. One of the things, the unfortunate things that we've gotten from this, a lot of religious, programming, is to fear spirit and the spirit world. And and you can imagine the list of things, because you probably rub up against that every now and then. But it basically puts you in a place of fear. It makes you not trust yourself. It makes you put a filter on of that it might be in some ways negative, and you'll be taken over. You're going to go down the wrong path. And what does that really do? It makes you not trust yourself. It makes you feel afraid of your own experience. And that's where the damage is, right? So my thought as that starting is. First, before you even start, validate that you're sensing and feeling spirits. Just validate it. Okay. The next thing is, though, you've got to start and do the shadow work around these things. And really, there's books actually around deconstruction that I'm sure like can help you move through some of this. So if you deeply hold value in your religion still, you don't have to move away from it, but maybe just you are not in alignment with the parts that say that this is an evil thing, right? And you'd have to really go back and look specifically, and you realize that the filter of this is coming from humans, not from spirit. So, and that it's an interpretation of text, right, from religion. So my biggest advice is start with yourself, work on your fears, work on deconditioning, work on moving away from that and letting that go, and then start with spirit. First, you want to connect with your own higher self, as you know, and your own spirit guides. And you want to help them make you feel safe, make you feel grounded, make you feel confident, and then work your way out from there. Because once you feel comfortable with yourself, you trust yourself, then working with the spirit world's, the next thing, because it's like you have to start within and work your way out in the energy field. And spirit, if you're also having, there's a variety of things. If you're also having a lot of spirits come to you, like some people are very active mediums and you haven't yet resolved some of this, understand that you have control to say, okay, spirit world, on my office hours, I'm not working right now and I'm working on me. So I would like to take a little pause from this conversation. I'm going to ask my spirit guides to come around me and just make me feel whole and protected because I'm working on my fears around working with you. Guess what? It works. It's like you just have to set your intention to say, I'm doing some deconditioning around my thinking and how I was brought up to fear spirit. And then I'm going to all be, the spirit world will always be there. It's not going anywhere. And it knows that you're healing. And that's the biggest thing. And so many mediums have had to go through this process. So you are not alone. 100% you are not alone. And then from there, what I like to do is if I'm working on my own mediumship, I start with my own family. So for example, I have loved ones, like both my parents are in the spirit world. I have, and family members, my sister's there, a variety of people. So I'll say, then I work on, please send me signs. This is really important. And that's where, so for example, my sister passed away, 3 years ago this July, tragically. And so she's my first, that's who I would ask for signs for, right? And I asked her and they can be very, very evidential, which is kind of what you got with the helicopter. I mean, probably on some level that woman needed it to be very, very obvious. So I said to my sister last fall, okay, so I need to do this because though I'm a medium, even though I teach mediumship, I need the evidence for my own journey, right? And I'm very honest with my students about this. And I said, send me the sign, because my sister loved nature, of hearts in nature. We were going on a road trip to pick my daughter up. We were in the Northern California area. It was fall, beautiful. And I was walking outside of the hotel room because we we're about to take off. And I heard a voice say, it was my sister, look down on the ground. And I looked on the ground and there were these two beautiful hearts that were from a tree. One for her, one for me. I'm getting the chills even just saying it. Because the other thing is you get the chills, right? That's a huge sign. There's many signs your loved ones can. And then I heard her say, look up. And I looked up and there was a tree full of these leaves with hearts on them. And so you have to understand, if you're a person you're just opening the door to a baby mediumship, talk to your loved ones who are your loved ones. They're your ancestors are your first line of mediumship that you should start with. And you can also just ask for everybody else to just hold back. If you're not, you have to take it. I always tell my students, trust your own nervous system. Don't push ahead. Like I have some students, because I practice, I'm a practicing witch. So I do a lot, and that triggers people on a whole nother level.
Uh-huh.
As you know, so because they think all the worst things as well. And I have some students that are like, I'm not ready for that. I said, don't be ready for something you're not meant to move into. Take your time, like don't push yourself into it, so that you take it one chapter at a time, one day at a time, one fear at a time, one uncertainty. And as you honor yourself, then by the time you get to a year from now, you'll be so much more connected to the spirit world because you trust yourself. So that's really my biggest advice I have for people, because there's a lot of that deconditioning,
Yeah,
tremendous.
definitely. Yeah, I had an experience several months ago with some people who were not open or aware yet, who were really coming down into the all of the fears that the scripture speaks. Um, but this is a very cool story. I was so filled with my own truth in knowing that it was light, that it wasn't the evil thing, that I just spoke it with so much love, and they really had nothing to say except just turned around with it because they just couldn't hold it. But I remember feeling like, gosh, if this had happened a year ago, I could not have stood up. I would
Wow.
not have been able to shine my light and just speak my truth, because we're always evolving, we're always growing, and we get served these challenges, these life challenges, when we're ready to take them on. So it was a beautiful turn of events. I was like, wow, like I've really grown a lot.
That's amazing. And that, and then what, and why is because you honored your journey.
Yes.
You did it as you were ready. And that's the most important thing. You trust yourself and your connection with spirit. And that's the main thing. It's not rushing ahead to be, a medium and then not listening to your fears. You're just
Mhm.
honoring the journey. It's like the inner child work, right? So
Yeah.
love that you shared that. That's so beautiful. I've had many of those too. People being more, not so much about religion, but about being skeptical about the reality of the spirit world.
Yeah.
And you just can't mess with evidence. Evidence is evidence. That's what's so great when you bring forth stuff. Even my husband, who is an engineer, he's very much on board and very supportive, but he's also like, I can't believe some of the stuff you say. Sometime you get numbers, dates, names, events, relationship dynamics. I go, that's the spirit world. It's all there for us.
And
For
isn't it amazing, like for example, your husband who sees you doing this on a daily basis and still gets so like, wow, like how
Yeah,
is that
very.
happening?
How does that happen? I was playing one for him like the other night, and I always just love, because I always go back and review if I have videoed or something, just do my nightly review, and he's just like, what, like a normal day at the office for you and I, Valeria, but then for them it's like, what? How did you even pull that? Where did you, how did you know that? I just go, it just comes through. It's just, and it's not about even being like that. It's just being open and sharing what you're getting.
That
Right.
brings me to a good point, because so many of us who have awakened or are aware of things are going down this path. We don't really have the family support that, is ready to embrace what you're going through. So, for example, when I first told my husband, and he's a chemist lawyer, so,
Yes.
very linear as well. When I first told him, he was like, completely scared. Like he didn't say he was scared, but I could sense it. And he was like, I did not sign up for this. And
Yeah.
it was like this pivotal point of like, oh my God, like I had no idea this was so huge. Yet
Wow.
at the same time, I could feel that, of course, he's scared. I was scared. I was scared of the word witch when I first started
I
myself.
know. I understand that. It's triggering for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you have any of that with your husband when you
Oh,
first?
yes, definitely. I think, well, notably, one of the things is he knew when we met many years ago that I had trained, right? And so he knew that about me. Now, I wasn't doing it professionally. So I was in a whole nother career as a hairstylist for many years, which I adored. That spirit brought me to. But I trained first and then I became a hairstylist. It was a very interesting chronological thing. And I think his fear was always not so much as if it believable, but the effects it would have on our social structure is very like, what will people think of me? Which of course I could really care less. But anyway, and then he also, so it wasn't so much was he was doubting that it was true. He was just doubting what the effect, he was protecting me. So it was a different kind of juxtaposition, and so it was more about can this actually be a real thing that you do as a living? It was more about that rudimentary stuff. And I was like, oh, it is. People need it, so now he's completely on board. So not so much. So the good thing is he didn't have the filter of fear or this is wrong, right? He didn't have that. It was more of the other of protecting me and my, my status. And I was like, oh my God, people know I'm who I am. They just now know it out loud. I mean, I think they probably figured it out by now if they're good friends of mine. Because I did not live a double life. I just didn't do it professionally, right? So yeah, but believe me, here's the other thing I did want to state is that what do we do about family members that aren't supportive? So that's so important. Here's my thing, and this is what I tell my community at my school and my students. I say, you don't have to tell when you're in the beginning of your journey, you don't have to share this with people at all. Keep it to yourself. Like until you feel strong enough, you're trying to get through your own fears and disbelief. If you tell them too prematurely, you're going to have to go through theirs as well. Why do you want to double up? Right? You want to be leaning in. So what you want to do is find a really safe, supportive, grounded, community of people that you can share with and you feel safe with, and you can be really yourself with about your journey. And then when you feel ready, then tell them. Like, don't feel like you have to come out with it. That's why I always say that's why they had mystery schools. Not everyone's meant to know everything. And not everybody is at the point where they'll understand it without their bias. And that is okay. And so, there's many things, people in my life who don't know to the extent of what my work is. They get the overall picture of it, but it's not for us to have to convince anyone, really. It's only for us. Now, your direct relationship, that's a different story. So if they're doing things like sabotaging, your journey and really denouncing it and having a difficult, that's a whole nother matter, I think, relationship wise. But you still have to, I just encourage people to step into their truth and be supportive in a safe space before you go out and tell people,
Yeah,
you know?
it's so important to have that support and that safe place to
Yeah.
develop and to share what you're going through,
Yeah.
and say what's happening to you so that you can get that validation, especially if there's no one else around you.
Yes, I know it. It's so true, Valeria. I love it so much. And then was my main motive. One of my reasons for, developing a school and a community was that I knew people needed each other more than they needed me, just a one-on-one, that they needed each other to be able to talk about their experience. And it does really speed things up for them, and that way they can keep going. They don't have to like grow a little bit during the week when they're in class and then stop because they
Mhm.
don't want to tell anyone else, and that they can continue it. You know what I mean? So that's very important. It's a process.
Yeah, so important. So I have one last question because it keeps popping
Please.
up, and it
Yes.
is about animals.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
yes, animals in spirit.
Yes, I love this question. Well, as you know, there's people that really specialize in animal communication, which is a whole nother wonderful specialty, right? So and the way it's worked for me is that so animal communication, we'll talk about that as one thing for living animals. That's one subject. Animal spirits that come through that are connected to the sitter, love it. Comes through all the time. And in fact, I was thinking just the other day, I was doing a reading and I was like, oh my gosh, there's the cutest little somebody coming through. Let me just see who this is. I can't quite get cat or dog yet. Hang on. This is a dog. This dog looks like a little fluffy, little cute, little darker color. She's like, yes, that's my Pomeranian. You know what I
Oh,
mean? So they always usually come. Sometimes I'll get them come through first, like they are the entryway. Like that's happened a lot of times. But also then they accompany, the family members because they're connected, right? So they're in spirit. I had once though, I was doing a reading live and he came in for a psychic reading. He's just like, tell me about my career. I was like, well, wait a minute, you just lost a dog. And I was like, whoa, hang on. And then I was tuning in. I said, this dog was like your baby, sat in your lap, And I said, and the other dogs you have right now that are living are waiting at the door for this dog to come home. And it's really sad. And he just burst in tears and was like, I just lost him last week. And he was like, even though he was a German Shepherd, he would sit in his lap like a baby, and the other dogs miss him. And I said, and he had his certain toys. And so it's whatever, the sitter is connected to in their heart space, will the animals come through typically. And it's such a beautiful thing. Of course, me, as because I'm a huge animal lover, so they tend to come to me. But it's an amazing thing. Now, communicating with them is different if you're doing, like I said, animal communication, because that in and of itself, like I feel like is a specialty. Like I have one of my students who right now is studying to be two of them, sorry, are studying to be an animal communicators. And I'm helping them from a mediumship perspective and with psychism, but they're also doing their own other training on themselves. Because there are people that have really made it, like I said, a specialty that understand how that animals communicate telepathically, right? So if you want to communicate with them and get your point across, you have to send them telepathic messages, and then they send them back to you. And this is how you can affect them, things like that, to change, like, I don't want to say necessarily change behaviors, but you can find out what their pet peeves are
Yes.
and what they need, which is amazing, and sometimes I get that come through. Amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, I love the animal part as well. It's
Yeah.
just so nourishing.
It is so nourishing. I feel exactly the same way because it's such a part of our wonderful human experience is connecting with pets, you
Yeah.
know?
Amazing. So you have been talking throughout this whole chat here about your your teachings and the containers that you create. So where can people go find you
Yes.
to
So
work with you?
yes, thank you so much. So first of all, thank you for asking. Well, the first place you can just go is my website, which is carriecost.com. Very simple. Through that, you'll see the links on how you can work with me, of course, through sessions, readings, and mentorship. And I do a variety of things, but also my school. And my school link is on there. My school is called the Sacred Seer School. And it's really a very inclusive, safe, fun, grounded spiritual environment to develop. And I do in that space, I teach different things, but we always come together as a community just for community events because different people are doing different things. Different people are on their journey. Some people just want to do a little, but they still want the community, and some people want the full thing. So I have an online platform that's just set up for that, which is wonderful. And so I have different things going on. My spirit team is giving me some incredible upcoming classes I'm going to be teaching, as well as my ongoing mentorship and training programs, which I'm always very excited about. And yeah, we're in like, exploring new territories. We are expanding. We go where spirit goes. I am, in that sense, I love grounded foundational teachings, but I'm always learning from my spirit team and my guides and my own, work that I'm doing to expand the work I'm doing of consciousness and in a safe and fun and grounded environment. So we have so many fun things going on this year. But we are like some of the teachings, for example, if you're in the school, we always do one monthly class all together. We have a book club, we have healing circle. We have many opportunities to communicate and link. My students also are able to practice doing readings in the space, which is very safe and fun for them. So it's wonderful. I love the community so much, and they're very inviting. So you can be anywhere you are in your journey and come there and feel comfortable because people are going to welcome you with open arms. There's no cliques. We don't do that there. There's no a dogma, as you know, because you are the same. And you're just met with love and non-judgment. So that's the vibe
It
of the place.
sounds wonderful. I do remember having jumped in a couple of your students practicing in the
Yes.
readings, and I always thought that was so fabulous. And you
Aw.
holding them there in that space at the same time as they're practicing is just such a nurturing environment for them. It just really feels so well rounded and just want to
Oh,
thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for how you're lifting the consciousness through your work and sharing your gifts. It's amazing. Thank you.
oh, thank you so much. I've enjoyed speaking to you tremendously. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I will talk to you next time. Hopefully, maybe you'll come back some other time and share some other things that are coming through. But thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much, Valeria. Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.